In Matthew 17:1, it begins to talk about when Jesus took 3 of his disciples to a high mountain. These 3 disciples were named Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And while they was on this high mountain, Jesus began to transfigure in front of them. His face was shone like the sun, and his clothes were as white as the light. This same high mountain was the same mountain that both Moses and Elijah were upon once upon a time in their journeys. And they began to appear to Jesus, and they all started talking to each other in front of Peter, James, and John. And they all were frightened. Peter didn't know what to say. He was speechless. He asked, "Should I prepare 3 shelters for both you, Moses, and Elijah?" And in the midst of this, a bright cloud covered all of them. And on top of the cloud, and in the transition of the cloud, they began to hear a voice saying, "This is my son, whom I love, and I am well pleased. Listen to him." And when they heard this, they all fell face down. They were afraid. But Jesus told them to get up. Don't worry. Don't be afraid. And he went on to say, "Don't tell anybody what you have seen until the Son of Man has been rose from the dead." Now, why do you think he told them to not go tell anybody? Was it because of the simple fact that they wouldn't believe and that the Son of Man's purpose hasn't been fulfilled until he was rose from the dead? Or is it because they would probably think that they were crazy? But when you look at it into context of what this chapter was being spoke about, it was the simple fact of Jesus expressing his love to his disciples by revealing himself to them and for allowing them to be a witness to his glory and to who he was proclaimed to be. He loved them so much that he was willing to reveal himself to them so that it can give them hope and show them love in the midst of their own confusion. But when you look at it into deeper context, it wasn't just speaking about the Transfiguration when Jesus revealed himself as the Messiah, as the Son of Man, but it was also revealing our hearts and the transfigurations within our hearts. If Jesus was willing to reveal himself unto us, then who are we to not be willing to reveal ourselves unto him and to allow our hearts to be transfigured? You see, the more that we get to know Christ, the more that we become deeper into his word, a transfiguration is happening. You see, the trick of it all is the simple fact that he just wants your heart. He wants your heart to be aligned with his. Look at it like this. We were created in his image. We were created in his likeness. But in the scriptures, it speaks about the more that we get disconnected from the word, it's like looking in the mirror and forgetting what we look like. Which means that the more we get disconnected from the word, we're not only disconnecting from him, but we're disconnecting from ourselves. Coming to the understanding that we were brought here as humans to simply love one another, to simply keep his commandments. You want to know why? because we were made in his image. We were made in his likeness. And the deeper that you get into his word, it's the deeper that you get into finding your identity in him. You were created for a purpose. You were created for a reason. But it starts with the shift of the heart. As we continue to move forth as being more in the likeness of Christ, there is a transfiguration that is happening within our hearts. And when there is a transfiguration that is happening in our hearts, that's when you know that a transformation is happening. And when the transfiguration begins, then becomes the discovery of finding your identity. You see, all of these correlates with one another. That chapter speaking about the transfiguration of when Jesus revealed himself to his disciples wasn't just for him, but it was for us. It is to allow us to come into terms as followers of Christ, to reveal ourselves and to confess. Because the scripture says, when we confess, he is just to forgive us. We have to be willing to allow ourselves to experience his forgiveness. And when we truly experience his forgiveness, it becomes easier to forgive ourselves. And that's where the transfiguration begins to happen. Above all else, this video was specifically for the followers of Christ and for those who are struggling to forgive themselves, struggling to finding their identity, struggling of not knowing where to start. If this video didn't help you as much, let me leave you with a message that hopefully it can transfigure your heart. He doesn't want everything that you have. He just wants your heart. And when you're willing, that's when the transfiguration and discovery begins.